Good afternoon.
We live in a world where violence is an everyday experience. Physical violence, sexual violence, psychological violence, structural violence, poverty, discrimination, all of that, it's an everyday experience. And peace building, therefore, also needs to be an everyday experience. Lisa Shirk defines peace building as simply working to prevent, reduce, transform, and help people recover from violence in all its forms. So within all of these systems that she talks about, these processes, I'm really locating my work in building capacity and transforming relationships, educating for peace, trauma healing, and conflict transformation. So then my work eventually boiled down to these two questions. One, what skills and behaviors will help transform a culture of violence into a culture of peace? And two, what role can the poetry classroom play in developing these skills and behaviors? So let's first look at our regular classrooms. This is how we teach our children. Leave out the dreams, the desires, the curiosity, feelings, sexuality, initiatives, adolescence, politics, personal experiences. Leave all of that out of the window and then come learn. This is what happens. I think we might learn a lesson from how this utterly unique and exquisite crystal, he's brought a snowflake into the classroom, turns into an ordinary, boring molecule of water, just like every other one when it is brought into the classroom. I love Calvin. Because you see, all of these things that we're asking our students to leave out of the classroom make up what we writers call voice, individual voice, as unique as your biological voice. And the writing classroom is in a really unique position where it's very easy to allow all of this back into the classroom. We just have to stop asking our children to write happy poems about spring when they're dealing with a parent's divorce. What happens when young people start writing from all of these experiences, and actually not just young people, I see this in people in their 40s and 50s who are in my workshops, is they suddenly feel like they have a space where their voice is heard, where it's respected. And it's kind of magical. You can almost physically see them unclench. They kind of relax. And they become much more open to real conversation, to real relationships. They're no longer as defensive. That's a really great and important place from which to start all of our other work around peace building. And as much as we teach voice, we teach silence. I had a musician friend who used to say that music isn't in the notes, it's in the silences between them. And I think that's something that we as poets, more than any other kinds of writers, really understand. We work with silence. We have line breaks and stanza breaks and really long lines for a spilling feel and really short lines for a restrained feel and extra indents and what have you. We know how to measure silence. We play with it all the time. And when we can get our students to start looking at this voice-silence dichotomy, to start asking these really important questions of when is somebody silent? Why are they silent? What are the silences out in the world? Is there a context in which those people speak? Is there a context where silence is better? All of those questions are really important to understanding power in our words, but they're also really important to understanding power out in the world. And of course, as we learn about silence, we learn how to break it. We live in a country of a lot of silences. Just really two quick alarming statistics. 78% of college-going young women in Delhi have experienced incest or childhood sexual abuse. 66% of young people in Delhi are physically abused. We don't talk about this stuff. Our classrooms don't take this into account. We don't deal with it. The writing classroom, again, is a really unique space that can help students start voicing their concerns about the world, their lived experiences, can help them start learning that they're not alone in their experiences, that these things they aren't just individual problems, they're social problems. And just that knowledge, that ability to write through and past those silences is an incredibly big part of what I talked about earlier in Lisa Shirk's conflict transformation and trauma healing. Just that discovery that others out there share my experience is incredibly empowering. But here's the problem. A lot of poetry, social change kind of projects stop at this stage. They stop at what, for want of a better word, can sometimes be just venting. And while it's really good as far as trauma healing goes, as far as discovering that you're not alone goes, you can end up with young people who feel more cynical about the world than ever because now they're hearing about violence all around them and more disempowered from creating anything else. That's why this part, imagination and creativity. This is Lederach again, the conflict transformation scholar. He says, conflict transformation doesn't ask, what do we need to end? It asks, what do we hope to build? Imagination is the art of creating what does not exist. Think think about it for a moment. Think back to your own educational experiences. Was there ever a time when you were told to imagine something that you wanted to build? Look at all of the resources around you, use them, use your skills, use your patience, use your talents, and build something new. If it ever happened, it happened in art class, any art class. We live in a world of taking things apart, of taking people apart, and I'm not discounting the importance of critical and analytical skills. They're really important. But if we want to equip our young people to create an alternate world, we need to teach them this. We need to teach them to build. We need to teach them what it means to create something. We need to ask them real and difficult questions about the world they want to live in. And we need to show them their power to build something new. And here's the thing, creativity is messy. I do pottery. It's a lot of mess. Even poetry for that matter. You write 8 pages, 6 lines of that go into poem, the rest you mop up, you recycle. But we need to teach our children to embrace that mess, to work through it, to use all of those things, their resources, skills, patience, talents, people around them, all of that, to build this world that they're imagining. And again, the art class, the poetry class is a really beautiful place where that can start happening. This is the other half of social change, and believe it or not, of writing. This is the most important thing I do as a poet. I listen deeply and carefully. Because frankly, my experiences as I sit alone at my desk, my thoughts, they're just such a tiny part of my experience of the world. And there's really not enough there to sustain more than a few interesting poems. If I really want to write, I have to listen to the world. One of my students called it plugging into the world. And again, what more important thing can we teach our children than to listen? To start paying attention to the world around them, start listening to those silences, those voices, not just their own. To start writing from all of that, maybe keeping a journal of images from their day, what I noticed today. In doing that, essentially what we're teaching them is we're teaching them to become curious about the world. And I'm going to tell you this really short, quick story about curiosity. I was doing an oral history interview with an African-American man in his 40s who had been in and out of prison since he was 8. And we were really struggling to find a point of connection, something that would allow him to open up to me. And so we were sitting in this room and there was no table, so I had my little dictaphone on my knee. And I was completely engrossed in what he was saying, and I didn't notice that my dictaphone slipped off and he had to catch it. And as he got it, he looked up to me and went, "Oh my God, you were listening. You were really listening. You didn't notice." And from that point on, he just told me this amazing story about his school and his kids and poverty and drugs and this woman he loves. And it was a real relationship, a real conversation. And that's the thing. There's no amount of active listening techniques that could have created that moment. They're important. But ultimately, what counted there was a genuine curiosity about this life of someone else. With curiosity comes empathy. This is Azhar Nafisi. No amount of political correctness can make us empathize with a child left orphaned. Only curiosity about the fate of others, the ability to put ourselves in their shoes, and the will to enter their world through the magic of imagination creates this shock of recognition. Without this empathy, there can be no genuine dialogue. Again, an incredibly important thing that literature does all the time. We take each other into worlds that we couldn't inhabit alone. As I get my students to start writing a poem from someone else's perspective, writing a persona piece, and as I refuse to settle for an easy caricature, push them to reflect and research and reflect and research, I'm asking them to reach imaginatively into the experience of someone else. It doesn't ultimately matter whether their portrayal is completely accurate. What they're doing in that process is becoming more capable of genuine empathy and genuine dialogue. That's what counts. And ultimately, sort of the underpinning of all of this is vulnerability. There's that beautiful TED Talk by Brené Brown where she says, in order for connection to happen, we have to allow ourselves to be seen, really seen. This is one of the reasons that every time I'm teaching a writing workshop, I will do all of the assignments that I ask my class to do while they're doing it, and I will share as much of my raw writing with them as they will share with me. A lot of traditional ideas about teaching revolve around authority, but I found that when my students see me as somebody who has her own joys and sorrows and eccentricities, they learn better, we connect better, they can see me, and that makes a world of difference. And you know how there's that old saying that you can't hate someone when you know their story? I think this, vulnerability, is the reason why. You see this person as just as capable of anger and forgiveness and joy and sorrow and all of that as you are, and something shifts in your relationship. It's hard to demonize that person then. Metaphor. Poets get metaphor. It's the lifeblood of what we do. And metaphor is not complicated. A little child says, "Look, Mom, there's a lamp in the sky," because she doesn't yet know what a star is. That's metaphor. It's how we make sense of the world. We compare what we don't know to something that we do know. The interesting thing about metaphor is it's also been an extensive tool of propaganda. I could give you a whole other TED talk about metaphor and propaganda, but for now I'm just going to share this one quick example with you. The metaphor of cancer. So cancer is often terminal. It's generally understood as incurable. It's an internal disease, and it's about unchecked growth. It evokes emotions like fear, desperation, the need for drastic measures. If you need to remove that part of the body, that's okay. All of this is sort of our unconscious associations with cancer. And if you look at this list together, this makes it a really powerful tool for any government or any totalitarian group that's advocating the extermination of another group, right? That group that we don't like is a cancer. Unconsciously, we are reacting to that over and over with all of these ideas. And when it's said often enough, that convinces us in a way that we might have been able to defeat in rational debate. These kinds of metaphors have been used by all kinds of governments. Interestingly, it used to be cancer or tuberculosis, and then they found a cure for TB, so it became just cancer. It's been used by Hitler, by Stalin, by Peron, by the Hindu right wing in India. It's everywhere. And there's lots of other smaller examples. You present a conflict to me as an argument amongst family members. I'll go in looking for common interests. You present it to me as a mechanical malfunction. I'll take a more analytical, less emotional approach. You present it to me as a war. I'll take a win-lose approach. Poets get this. We use metaphor all the time to explain complicated, difficult ideas, emotions, all of that. And when we can really teach our kids about metaphor, we're giving them at least two really important skills. The first is the ability to see through that propaganda, to see through those lies, to see through that emotional manipulation and change it. The second is the ability to develop their own metaphors. When they see the difference between thinking about the world in terms of war and peace, or thinking about the world in terms of dialogue or family disagreements, they have the ability to reimagine the world based on a new metaphor. And like I already said, those metaphors are a huge part of how we think and how we walk through the world. So finally, why does poetry matter? This is what I'm going to say. If I can get my students to reimagine the world based on a deep empathy, a willingness to embrace vulnerability, an awareness of their own voices and the voices of others, an understanding of silence and the ability to break it, the curiosity to listen really deeply to the world, the awareness of the power of their metaphors and their imaginations, and the ability to create what does not yet exist, then I've done my job as a poet, as an educator, and as someone who feels passionately about peace and justice. That is where all my selves meet. Thank you.